Welcome back to the Target Forge series on Field Target Hunter Division. Be sure to subscribe so you can follow this series and dig into many of the other videos we have available here on the channel. This will be part one of a build for our friends over at the Airgun Geeks podcast. They mentioned that they really liked my cart that I use at field target matches, so I figured it was a great opportunity to share that build with you all, my favorite viewers. Part one of the project will be a little about the donor product we will harvest for this and what makes my design special. Here's a hint. It involves components from the Range Erector Set line of products available, guess where? Hunter Field Target 101. Brought to you by your friends at Target Forge. Now let's start off with a bit of a story about the carts often built and used for this particular application. During the 2021 RMAC competition, the Target Forge tent was right across the midway from our friends at American Airgunner and Firebird Targets. I was in good company, to be sure. There was a young lady seated with Rossi, and it was around lunchtime that day. The wind hadn't shifted yet in the canyon, and there was a lull in the action. None of us were terribly busy at the time. Two gentlemen I had met earlier that week and had a delightful chat with, pretty sure they became Target Forge customers, strolled by us, pushing their converted B.O.B gear strollers, carrying thousands of dollars in rifles and equipment from the pro range. I took the opportunity to poke a bit of fun at them. After all, I had a B.O.B cart myself, why not? So, as they walked by, chatting to each other, I winked at them, nodded my head, and said, "Good afternoon, ladies." Without missing a step, they tipped their hats and winked back, while the lady sitting with Rossi burst out laughing at all this. And we all had a good laugh at my cart-bearing brothers. There are some that think that B.O.B stands for baby on board, and it does not. The real story is that two bicycle guys got together, designed a really nice trailer for cyclists, and called their company B.O.B Gear because it stood for Beast of Burden. They were, in fact, the beasts of burden. Not wanting any unfortunate entanglements with Mick Jagger's ample legal team, B.O.B Gear was born. Later, after they had both been fruitful and reproduced, they turned their minds to creating a really high-end sport utility stroller, built like a quality bicycle and capable of greater speed on a wider range of surfaces than carriages of the day. You could now take your kids running with you. A product segment was born. Now, why use these for gun haulers? The design and build quality are exceptional. I would argue best in class. Large diameter tires on lightweight, high-strength wheels, easy to apply parking brake, very strong frame, good suspension, all make this a great platform for transformation into a hauler for your high-value item. In part one of this series, we'll look at what the original prototype, or my cart, looks like, and why I went the way I did. Let's check out a R.O.B, or rifle on board. When I designed my cart, I was solving a somewhat different problem than the typical field target match would require. My powder burner club that I belong to has, or had pre-pandemic, a thriving airgun and quiet 22 event they hosted once a month called Silent Night. Access to the range is up a steep trail some ways until you arrive panting with all your stuff at the pistol house. Getting your gear up there can be a chore. And I had seen someone showing off their cart on social media, and I thought, well, that might be fun to build one of those. Being one of the few PCP shooters at these early events, I often needed my own air supply. As interest in my guns grew and others joined the fray, I found myself supplying more and more air to all those hungry guns. So our first requirement was discovered. Must safely transport a large SCBA bottle. Check. Truth be told here, this was one of the first fabrication projects I did after my stroke. This was rehab for me. I had wondered what I had lost to the brain damage that occurred during that critical loss of blood flow to my brain. My own body was trying to kill me. What had it cost me? What would my healing be like? Scary times, to be sure. Many of us have survived moments like this. Some have not. Some have fared better than others. Take good care of yourselves, boys. Life is trying to kill us. Just kidding. Or am I? Next up, I had to carry my guns cased, which the lower tray did quite well. Hauling a few rifles, my bag, a bottle, something to drink, flashlights. I could make it to the pistol house in one trip and not look like a Sherpa. Then it had to transform into a cool bit of airgun kit. I needed to shake that baby stroller vibe. So I added lots of horsepower increasing stickers and patches for that. And it was quite effective. In my mind, anyway. Then this field target journey began, and I saw folks carrying really expensive guns around, setting them on the ground. And I thought, I've got a tool for that. So I mounted some ATV rifle holders right to the edges of the frame, and off I went. What I learned, thankfully not the hard way, was that when these guys designed these carts with the CG, or majority of the mass, was where the baby got slung there in the belly of the cart. It made a whole lot of sense. Great for stability while moving and sitting still. Having your rifle perched on the edge, turns out, was probably not a great idea. Back to the drawing board. Remember those? Does anyone actually go back to the drawing board anymore? Leave a comment below and let me know what you use now. So, using some of the Range Erector Set hardware I was developing at the time, I adopted some simple conduit segments and 3D printed connectors to create some new clamp locations inside the frame of the cart, moving the CG in between the wheels where it belonged. This change also allowed the relocation of the clamps, such that the cart could be folded as flat as originally designed. The clamps on the perimeter interfered with folding and relegated it to truck bed transport, hardly as useful as it could be. Now, I could use my wife's hybrid to drive to distant matches and not burn all that expensive California fuel, playing the field target game I had come to really enjoy. I'm pretty happy with where this design ended up. It may still morph in time, as much of my stuff does, but it provides a safe place for my gun and my gear. Hope to see you at a match soon. That brings us to actually getting started with this build. Let's start converting this old Bob into a R.O.B for our friends at the Airgun Geeks podcast for their adventures in field target back east in Ohio. First up, sourcing a suitable candidate for conversion. Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace are great places to start searching for that perfect specimen. I've even found them sitting by the side of the road with the trash, but never a real Bob gear unit, mind you, just the clones, which I don't recommend. The overall quality of manufacture and design just are not there. I avoid the double wide units too. They will undoubtedly adversely impact your popularity at matches. They are just too wide and always in someone's way. A good single wide with a pivoting front wheel are solid choices. These things are really expensive new, like well over 500 bucks. Young families, as they grow up, often use these less and less, and eventually they find their way outside or shoved in a garage to wither in the elements, having outlived their usefulness. This plays right into your hands. The top fabric and child seat get ravished first, and seriously affect the resale price. See where this is going? We don't care because we're going to chuck that bit away anyway. I got the original unit for $25 and this one for $40 just a few weeks ago. For young families, space is often at a premium, and they often want these out of their way when they are no longer useful. Let's give them a second life. So, step one, get a B.O.B gear stroller suitable for conversion into a R.O.B. Check. Next, look at the tires. They rarely get worn out unless mom and dad were avid marathon trainers. The inner tubes will often fail due to age. I've messed around with patching them, but once they are failing due to age, you're probably better off just getting a fresh 3-pack on Amazon for cheap and replace them all to start with. Affiliate link below. Just be sure to check the tire size. The front tire is often common to these units, but I've seen at least 2 different rear tire sizes. So, step 2, make sure your tires and wheels are serviceable and hold air. Flat as could be. These things are a cinch to work on. Just flip that up. Undo the wheel lock. Off it comes. For those that may never have changed an inner tube before, we just want to come in here and just grab that tire, only the edge of the tire. You don't want to pinch that inner tube, even though this one's already destroyed. If you were just working on one and wanted to check the inner tube, you could easily grab it with the tire spoon and end its life or create a patching event for yourself. Get that lip exposed all the way around. And just pull that old inner tube right out of there. It looks like our strip that goes in the center of the rim to protect the inner tube from the ends of the spokes, the spoke nipples, has failed as well. So we're going to have to take this tire off completely and rehab this rim a little bit. So now that one half of the tire is already off the rim, it's usually pretty easy to just pull it the rest of the way off. And here you can see those nubs from the spokes protruding here, and that liner is meant to protect those. So another way to do this is just take a little black electrical tape, and I actually put it glue side up for the first wrap so that when it comes around, the adhesive only touches the tape itself. Then I'll come around and put it glued down. This way, you really just end up with a strip of vinyl down in that slot, glued to itself. Otherwise, you're going to make the job in the future for the next guy a lot worse if all that glue is stuck everywhere. We're going to come back to that valve stem hole, and we're just going to trim that out. Okay, there we go. Now we got some protection for that inner tube in there. Be careful opening these packages up. You don't want to hurt one of those brand new inner tubes. So the next step is to get the tire back on the rim. We only want half of it on. You don't want to go all the way on yet. And you should be able to do this with just your hands. There we go. Now we got a nice big spot in there that we can feed that new inner tube in and hopefully not pinch it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this valve stem and get it fed in here. If you put that valve stem cap back on there, it should prevent you from losing it, getting it pulled back through into the interior of the rim again. And then we're just going to tuck this rest of this inner tube back in that void, making sure not to twist it or get it all wrapped around there. So no twists. In there nice. It's nice and loose in there. Now sometimes you can put a little bit of air in there just to get it to inflate, but honestly this thing is so loose, and I don't think we're going to need to do that. I think we can just go ahead and start getting that tire fitted in there. Now again, you might need the aid of a tire spoon right at the end, but I encourage you to try and not use it, because that's oftentimes where this whole project goes wrong. You end up pinching that inner tube in there, and you really just don't even need it. There it is. We've got it all back together. And we'll grab an airline, get that aired up, get it put back on. Okay, now that we're ready to air this up, I'm just going to push on the tire here to make sure that valve stem stays out. And I'm just going to touch it. So let's get this back on here. Now, one thing we want to do is turn this till it takes up the slack. The only thing we ever turn typically is this end. And we want to make sure that the lock stays at the 90-degree position. Just bring it down until it just snugs up. It's a little bit loose yet. Make it so this is in line with the front fork. You should be good to go. That should give years of service. So now we're going to roll this cart over on its side, and we're going to pop one of these rears off. Just lift that lever up, it comes right out. These are holding pressure. They're just a little light on pressure, so I think we're just going to pop a little air in there and put them back on. These wheels pop on and off really easy, so even if you're challenged for trunk space, you can still get this cart in the trunk of even the tightest car. We're going to stop there for now and leave some work for the next episode. Thanks for joining me on this adventure today. Remember, be a light in the darkness. You just never know who might be impacted by your light.